The air above Moscow was thick and heavy, the clouds black and roiling, as if the heavens themselves protested the birth. On August 25, 1530, in the royal estate of Kolomenskoye, Elena Glinskaya cried out in pain. Outside, lightning split the skies, and thunder shook the stones of the Kremlin miles away. In the final hour of her agony, a boy was born, Ivan Vasilievich, heir to the Grand Principality of Moscow. The midwives gasped when the baby wailed. It was a sharp, strong sound, cutting through the storm like a blade. The bells tolled through the city, announcing the birth of the future ruler. But old priests who stood in the shadows murmured to one another, the storm was a sign. This child was marked by God and by wrath. Even his cradle was heavy with destiny. Tragedy struck early. Ivan's father, Vasily III, died of an infection when Ivan was only 3. With his last breath, Vasily placed the crown on his son's tiny head and whispered prayers no one heard. The regency fell to his young wife, Elena Glinskaya, a clever, ambitious woman. But the boyars, Russia's ancient noble families, resented her rule. For 5 years they plotted, whispering in darkened halls, and in 1538, Elena herself was found dead. Poisoned, many believed. Ivan was now an orphan in all but name, at the mercy of those who despised him. The boyars ruled in his name. They controlled the Kremlin, feasted in his halls, laughed at his suffering. They left him cold, hungry, ignored. They treated him as a nuisance, even as a joke. They made him watch as they humiliated servants, hanged rivals, squandered his inheritance. In those lonely, frozen corridors, Ivan learned cruelty. He learned that mercy was weakness. He wandered the towers barefoot, clutching scraps of bread, watching dogs starve in the courtyards. One night, he grabbed a stray dog by the scruff and hurled it from the highest tower, laughing when it struck the stones below. That, he whispered to himself, is what they deserve. By his teens, Ivan had learned how to wear a mask. In public, he bowed his head meekly to the boyars. In private, he plotted revenge. In 1547, at just 16, he summoned the clergy, the nobles, and the court to the Cathedral of the Dormition. There, before the relics of the saints, he declared himself not merely Grand Prince, but Tsar of all Russes, the first Russian ruler to claim that title. The boyars fell to their knees. The priests anointed him with holy oil and placed Monomach's cap on his head. Ivan's cold blue eyes swept the hall. He was no longer the boy they had mocked. He was Caesar now, the supreme, divinely ordained ruler. And they would pay. That same year, he married Anastasia Romanovna, a young noblewoman chosen from a bride show. Anastasia was gentle, intelligent, and kind. She alone seemed to calm the fury in his heart. With her at his side, he began his reign with surprising wisdom. He reformed the laws, created new courts, ordered the first printing press in Russia. He even created a standing army, the Streltsy, and began expanding Russian borders. For a time, Moscow prospered. For a time, Ivan smiled. Anastasia became his light. The Kremlin, once a prison of stone and shadows, became a home. At night they sat together by candlelight as she read him psalms and poetry. Sometimes, when he woke from nightmares, she was there to stroke his hair and soothe his fears. Without you, he told her once, I would be no man, only a beast. In 1552, he led his armies against Kazan, breaking the power of the Mongol Khanates. Cannon fire roared through the fog as Russian soldiers stormed the walls, planting his banner over the burning city. When he returned to Moscow in triumph, it was Anastasia who crowned him with a laurel wreath and kissed his cheek. The people called him Ivan Grozny, Ivan the Terrible, But then, the word meant awe-inspiring, formidable. He was a hero, Russia's defender, but heroes fall. In 1560, Anastasia fell ill. Her skin turned ashen, her breath shallow. Ivan sat at her bedside, clutching her hand as the priests muttered prayers. "Don't leave me," he whispered. "Don't leave me alone." But she did. When she died, something inside him died too. He tore his robes, smashed the icons from the walls, and ran screaming through the Kremlin, cursing God and man alike. He became convinced the boyars had poisoned her. And maybe they had. But even if they hadn't, he decided they would pay. From that day on, Ivan dressed in black. After Anastasia's death, Ivan's reign darkened. He withdrew from court for months, letting Moscow descend into chaos. When he returned, he was changed. His eyes were colder, his words sharper. In 1565, he created the Oprichnina, his private army of black-clad riders. They answered to no one but him. They roamed the land on black horses, carrying dogs' heads to symbolize their hunt. And what they hunted was treason. They dragged boyars from their estates, burned villages, raped and slaughtered entire families. They left severed heads on pikes outside the Kremlin walls. Sometimes Ivan rode with them, striking down peasants and nobles alike with his iron staff. In 1570, rumors reached Ivan that the city of Novgorod plotted to defect to Poland. He gathered his Oprichniki and rode there at the head of his army. For 5 weeks, Novgorod burned. Men were dragged naked into the snow, whipped until they bled, then hanged. Women were stripped and tied to stakes as Oprichniki set fire to their homes. Children were thrown into the frozen Volkhov River, their cries muffled by the cracking ice. Ivan rode through the carnage, praying aloud for their souls, even as he ordered their deaths. When it was over, the river ran red for miles. By the 1580s, Ivan's body was failing. His hands shook, his teeth rotted. His mind was clouded by paranoia. He saw assassins in every shadow, demons in every dream. One winter's day in 1581, he struck his pregnant daughter-in-law during an argument, causing her to miscarry. When his eldest son and heir confronted him, Ivan's rage boiled over. "You dare raise your voice to me?" he bellowed, swinging his staff. The iron tip struck his son's skull. The boy collapsed in a pool of blood. Ivan fell to his knees, weeping, cradling his son's head. "Forgive me," he whispered. "Oh God, forgive me." But forgiveness never came. In the final years of his life, Ivan was a shadow of the man he once was. He gave away his jewels, wore plain linen robes, and sat alone in his chamber for hours, whispering prayers to an empty room. He played endless games of chess, staring at the board as if it held the answers to his sins. At night, he woke screaming, clutching his chest, seeing Anastasia in his dreams, and sometimes the accusing eyes of his dead son. Even his enemies pitied him. On March 18th, 1584, Ivan sat down to play chess. Across from him, a servant moved the first piece. Ivan leaned forward, then froze. His face went pale. He toppled from his chair, scattering the pieces across the floor. When they carried his body away, it was already bloated and blackened. Some said he had been poisoned. Others whispered that even the devil had tired of him. He was buried in the Archangel Cathedral in Moscow. But even in death, people claimed they heard his footsteps echo through the Kremlin. Ivan left Russia bigger, stronger, and more feared than ever before, but he also left it scarred. Villages burned, families destroyed. The memory of terror in every corner of the empire. To some, he is still a hero, the Tsar who defended orthodoxy, who crushed the boyars and forged a nation. To others, he is a monster, the tyrant who killed his own son, drowned Novgorod in blood, and ruled through fear. His name lives on, Ivan the Terrible.